Hi, all. Welcome in. We're going to wait just another minute or two to get started. Make sure everyone gets a chance to hop in. Still got some trickling in here, so I might give it another second. All right. In the interest of starting on time and finishing on time, good morning to most of y'all. Good evening to some of you. And to everyone, welcome to the Gaining Ground webinar series. We're very glad to have you all today. Thanks for those of you who just joined. We're just getting started. So a little bit about the series. Most importantly, the Gaining Ground webinar series was organized by graduate students in the urban food system here at the Kansas State University, and it still is run by graduate students here at Kansas State University in UFS. The webinar series provides agriculture educators with tools and skills to better support UFS enterprises. And the topics we'll cover will focus on problems or skills that support those UFS enterprises and programs. And there's a little bit about how it got started. Now, our topic today is urban hives, nurturing bees for biodiversity and nutrition. Among the many things we'll talk about are the importance of beekeeping and honey as a nutritional source, the integration of bees in urban agriculture settings, some challenges associated with urban beekeeping, and future paths for urban beekeeping as well. Our first speaker today is Dr. Laura Stan. She's an associate professor at the University of Agricultural Sciences and Veterinary Medicine of Cluj-Napoca in Romania. She'll be followed up by Mr. David Friesen, who is the founder and head beekeeper of the nonprofit BKC, located local here in Kansas City, Missouri. A little bit about our agenda or schedule today. We're going to start with introductions, to which you've been privy so far. Then we're going to move on to a presentation from Dr. Stan next, followed by the talk from Mr. David Friesen. And then at the very end, we will have a joint Q&A session with both of our speakers. So please use the Q&A button on your screen to submit questions during both of our speakers' talks. And also make sure to address the speaker you'd like to address your question to. And we will get to them at the end in the Q&A for both of them. Now, without further ado, I will pull up the presentation for Dr. Stan, and she can go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Alex, for the nice introduction. It's wonderful to be here today with all of you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I feel so honored, and I'm so pleased to meet you all again. So I prepared this presentation about urban beekeeping, and Alex, please click next. So we will get some insights into the resources needed for urban beekeeping, some models of American versus European beekeeping in cities, then advantages and disadvantages of urban beekeeping, and some examples from Europe. I'm sure David will cover up whatever is American much better than I do. Thank you. So the resources needed for any kind of beekeeping, either it is in a city, either it's in a rural area, bees need sources for the food, and their sources for the food are actually plants, nectariferous plants, which are actually giving them nectar, which is their source of energy, because bees will create honey from this nectar. The same flowers will provide bee pollen, which is their source of protein. And then they need water, like a river or a lake or somewhere where they can find water to thermoregulate, but also to quench their thirst. And the bees also need resins from the trees. So when you want to create an apiary in your city, make sure that on an area like around 1.8 miles around your backyard or where you want to place your hives, all these sources are available for the bees for the whole year. Next. Some advantages for urban beekeeping are pollination. Maybe you know, or maybe you don't, but actually 80% from our food is due to bees because they are pollinating a lot of plants. They are increasing the harvesting rate. And if you consider that even they are pollinating the feed which the animal are eating, then you can indirectly consider that even the meat which you have in your hamburger, for example, or your tacos, is also due to the bees. Then we have the advantage of biodiversity. And when I mean the preservation of biodiversity, I mean not only of the plants due to pollination, so they can become fertile, and then they multiply, create seeds further, and we will have a future generation of plants, but also of other pollinators. Doing beekeeping is helping people to connect with nature. And this is something which I learned when I've been in Kansas, when I met Gary Lagrange, which is a beekeeper from Fort Riley near Manhattan in Kansas. And he's actually a former soldier who is training former soldiers as he is he is teaching them beekeeping, and he realized that practicing beekeeping for a year helped the soldiers to reduce the syndromes of the post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is a very significant rate. So it's very, very helpful. Usually when you get in contact with beekeepers, you will notice that they are very well grounded. They are very well aware of the natural cycles. So it's really nice to have a talk with a beekeeper. When you meet one, please have some questions prepared and talk with them because they are really, really nice and very friendly people. Another advantage of beekeeping is that it raises awareness of consumers, especially in urban area where consumers, let's say, are somehow disconnected of the nature. And I mean, especially here in Europe, because there in US, I noticed that a lot of people are living in houses, so you still have a lot of yard around your house. But here in Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, where I come from, a lot of people live in apartment complexes. So it means that there are 40 or 100 families in one apartment complex, and next to it is another apartment complex. So it means that nature is very reduced. So taking care of bees helps people to connect with nature and also to become aware that their food is due to the bees. There was a saying of Einstein who said that if the bees die in 5 years, all nature on Earth will die, because bees have this tremendous impact on our nature. Taking care of bees in a city is also a great opportunity for education. And this is something which is very nicely mentioned in our European legislation, and is a specific focus for all Europeans to educate children on beekeeping and bee products and natural healing, because the kids are the future generation of consumers. If they are healthy, they will live longer. And if they are aware, they will make better choices. So it's very important to educate children first. If a kid is asking his parents to buy a specific type of honey, the parent will follow the kid's suggestion. And of course, there are educational opportunities for consumers and as well for beekeepers or for people who are interested to become beekeepers. The disadvantages of urban beekeeping is actually what I mentioned earlier, the limited resources, because here in Europe, we have very small space for vegetation in the cities. You will see further some images from some European cities. There are some other disadvantages which are connected to bees, like the bee health. If the bees are very crowded, then it might be an overpopulation and competition for resources, and some kind of diseases in case they emerge. It's very difficult to manage because it might be that if one beehive is, let's say, weak or ill, very soon will contaminate the other beehives which are in the area. There is another downside, like reduced genetic diversity, because bees usually mate naturally in the air. And if there are not enough drones in the area, then the queen bee will have a low amount of genetic diversity of drones, or actually drones from the same beehives, not actually drones from other beehives. And that actually means that it will lead to reduced genetic diversity. And of course, there is a problem of public perception, and this is where European Union suggests that it is very important to have public education and instruct population how to behave and to accept bees and to understand their importance and to consume better honey and other bee products. Next. So in USA, as far as I learned from my research, I learned that the regulation is depending on the state and sometimes on the city. While in Europe, we have one regulation which was issued in 2019. The focus of American legislation is mainly on honey production and individual beekeeper initiative. So let's say it's a much more pragmatic view in America. While in Europe, actually the focus of this regulation is focused on responsible beekeeping practices, and they highlight a lot of directives concerning bee health and public safety, and they have a very strong emphasis on raising public awareness, especially children education programs, beekeeper education programs, change of beekeeper generation, because now a lot of beekeepers are very old and they are trying to encourage young generation of beekeepers to learn beekeeping and to continue this activity. And it is the first time when in legislation appeared the word apitherapy, and they are actually mentioning all the other bee products except honey, like bee pollen, propolis, bee venom, royal jelly, which are very useful in apitherapy. They are also suggesting to give more funds to beekeepers who are producing this type of products. Actually, when you look at the market, you will notice this, these products are much more expensive, therefore much more profitable for beekeepers to harvest. And these products also have a lot of impact in cosmetics. So taking this in regard, you can see that there are two different perspectives on urban beekeeping. Yeah, and I mentioned earlier that there are in Europe, the population is very different. So we have a lot of population compared to Kansas City. Yeah, and I will show you next some images from Paris. Look, this is a beekeeper which has hives on the roof of Notre Dame. This is an article which I have found on New York Times, and I inserted the link below so you can find the article and dig in further. Isn't it nice to have bees there? Or also on the opera. Imagine bees listening to opera while they are creating honey. Next. Or another beekeeper which is having his bees on his balcony. So you can see the limited space which he has on his balcony, and also how close the other apartment complex is and how big the other complex apartment is. So you can imagine the population in these areas. So it actually means that in some areas, these bees have very scarce resources. So the beekeeper has to have very good skills in bee management and be careful. And in case the honeybees are lacking food, he has to come and supplement. Therefore, the honeybee, the beekeeping practices in urban areas in Europe focus more on education, not really on honey production. Thank you. Next, Alex. Here is an image from London. This is actually a nice idea because one of Pooja's questions in my email was how the beekeeper can use beekeeping in urban areas in order to make it profitable. So I looked for this topic specifically, and I like this idea. And when I searched for the next speaker, I discovered that he is also doing this type of activities too. So this particular beekeeper has his bees on the roof of his restaurant and hotel, and he's actually serving the honey in the bar and in the restaurant. He created a menu with bee products, and he has mead, which is a fermented wine made from honey. He has also Hive beer, which is a beer obtained from fermented honey. He also serves the classic cocktail, the bee's knees, and he has a whole menu with honey included in every dish. So this might be a very interesting idea for the people who are interested to have B&B or a restaurant or a hotel and include this kind of activity into their palmarès. Thank you. This is urban beekeeping in Bucharest, in Romania. The guy you see on the left with the yellow t-shirt is actually the secretary of our Romanian Society of Apitherapy. And he's doing beekeeping classes with children from kindergarten almost daily. So they are scheduled on a specific time frame. And they come and they learn about bees, they learn about beekeeping, and it's really enthusiastic to see how many kids have a nice memory afterwards. And it is increasing awareness into the population. Yeah, thank you. Next. This is an image from our university apiary. What you see in the image is actually a very fresh picture because all of them were taken last week. We had the International Honey Commission conference last week between 22nd, 24th April. And Gino Abdul from Great Britain was here, and he wanted to have a picture in our apiary. And you see on the right side in the image our PhD students. The left one is Alex, and in the right is Gianluca from Italy. And you can see that they are carrying supper with frames in their hands. Thank you. And yeah, the last message would be some take-home messages, the opportunities for financial um, benefits would be to harvest not only honey, but also bee pollen, propolis, royal jelly, bee wax, and bee venom. In order to harvest bee venom, it is very difficult, and it is a specific tool which you have to use, and bees don't really like it. But all the others are much more friendly and are very useful, and you can mix them together in order to get a lot of we call api cocktails. So a cocktail of bee products which are very healthy and beneficial for immunity, for stress, for tiredness, for a lot of situations. In terms of social and environmental benefits, Beekeepers usually, at least in Europe, they are connected in a network, which is the Beekeepers Association. And they are very close connected. They are always helping each other. And also for us researchers, it is very easy to connect with them because this kind of Beekeepers Association has a secretary. And when we call the secretary and we ask them or we tell them, we inform, look, there is this event which will be organized next week, then we like to say beekeepers swarm there. So you give one phone call and 500 beekeepers appear there in no time. So beekeepers are usually so passionate about their bees and their bee products and whatever is connected to bee life, that they never get tired of talking about bees or learning about bees. And it is so interesting for us as researchers to see this phenomenon happening over and over and over again. So it's amazing. It's really amazing. For the environment, as I said, the great benefit which the bees do, like pollination, it's amazing because it's actually helping us to live our life on this earth. And in terms of education, if you have a backyard apiary, then you can do workshops for children or for your own customers, or even learn somebody who is young and interested and passionate about bees, learn some small tricks about beekeeping, and maybe you will raise another beekeeper. Next. And I would like to thank you for your attention, and I would like to thank all the team from Kansas. I love you all, and I missed you dearly. So thank you so much for your attention. I will be looking forward to hear your questions.
Well,
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Alex.
Dan. I appreciate it. I saw you also included these. I'll just pull them up so they'll be in the
Yeah,
recording.
these are just for the people who are interested in more details about the regulation, but actually I also inserted the link so you can Google and find the regulation by yourself. But it is really, really amazing to see that Bruxelles realized the importance of all these bee products, and they actually look how they wrote there, significantly contribute to citizens' well-being and are high quality foods sought as part of a natural way of life. They play a key role in the healthcare and cosmetic industries. So uh, these these words are so nice and so well put together, and they are so true. So I was really happy to see this legislation coming out and helping the beekeepers, and to see the efforts of Brussels into increasing the awareness of consumers about the quality of the bee products. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shed. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
My
Um,
pleasure.
Now I am going to fix the spotlight on Mr. David Friesen, and then if you would be so kind as to share with us BKC and what you do and what you get up to. And in the meantime, y'all, please feel free to send questions. We will hold on to them until the very end, but please feel free to send them while you're listening. Anyway, sorry, David, go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah. I want to thank everybody for having me. Thank you, Dr. Stan. That was really interesting. And I'd love to talk about bees more later. Sorry for not having any PowerPoint slides. I'm a complete Luddite, and no job I've ever had has anything to do with computers. I think that's something that appeals to me about beekeeping. We've done it for thousands of years, and there's always room for research and new scientific advances into it, which there's been a lot over the last 10, 15, 20 years. But I let other people do that and just read about it. So that's what I like to do. A few years ago, I started BKC, and it's a nonprofit devoted to beekeeping and to native bees within the city of Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas. As of right now, I maintain 150 hives, a little more given swarms and splits that happen over the year. and they're all around the city. I have some on restaurant roofs. I've got some downtown on a rooftop, but all sides of the city, all different types of sites, and anywhere from 3 hives at a community garden to 30 hives at a big food pantry. I like to focus on other nonprofits and urban farms, especially, but also schools. The honey is shared between us and the host. They get it for free. They don't pay anything in terms of maintenance or equipment, nothing at all. And then they just get the free honey. So for farmers, they can sell it, they can make other things with it. The schools tend to give it away to donors or board members, what have you. And so, it's a really nice thing to be involved with the community. And the bees will pollinate a few miles around every hive. So it's huge for the ecosystem. And on top of that, we keep native bee homes, which you might have noticed in the background of one of the slides previous. They really help support all of the, I think, 200 to 400 species of native bees in our region, and they need a lot more help. The honeybees, of course, are European. They came here and only reached our region in the 1800s, early 1800s. And at this point, they're very essential, but we really want to make sure that we're boosting the natives along with the honeybee. The natives will only travel up to 1,000 feet or so, and that's versus over a few miles for the honeybees. And in addition, the honeybees, each hive could hold up to 80,000 bees, but the native bees, usually just one female, goes and lays a bunch of eggs each year, doesn't have a home, doesn't defend the colony, and then those eggs hatch the next year. So your bumblebees, carpenter bees, mason bees, all of those, they just need a lot more help, basically. And we can all do native plantings and keep native bee homes everywhere, and that does a big deal. So those are kind of two things. On top of that, BKC does a lot of education. So I go around to a lot of schools, do little pop-ups here and there. I have a colony of bees in a little glass hive. I love to take that to schools, and it always freaks everybody out. Even any age from, I've done 4-year-olds to 90-year-olds, and they love seeing the bees. In terms of me, I started beekeeping about 12 years ago. My uncle started me on it. He's in California. He has a few hives. And like Dr. Stan said, once you get into it, you just get so passionate about it, and you just can't not have bees. You just want them all the time. You miss them in the winter. You want to see them in the spring. You just can't not have them. And so it's been nice to just slowly increase the number of hives managed all over town, involve other people in it, and educate everybody about it. One area I was asked to address was the logistics of it within a city. Every city and suburb in the area has different regulations in terms of, number of hives, where they're supposed to be, if you can have them at all. Some places don't let you have bees whatsoever. Sometimes there's an HOA, homeowners association, in the neighborhood, and they won't let you do hives. What I tell people, because I do a lot of workshops as well, which is part of the outreach and education, what I tell people is, as long as your neighbors are happy, if you can't see the hives, nobody knows they're there. Do what you want. Technically, you're supposed to register them with the health department. I don't know anybody who's done that. There is like one state beekeeper, I think, for Missouri, maybe 2, but they're concerned with the really big agricultural folks. So within a city, it's under the radar really easily. But the number one thing is, keep it safe and keep the bees healthy. Poorly managed bees are more aggressive, they're stressed out. And like Dr. Stan said, if they have a disease, you could create an epidemic. You could spread it to all the hives, and then, within a few miles, and that could spread. So that's something to be careful of. Just keep everybody safe and healthy, and keep the neighbors happy. Just give them a few jars of honey now and then. And the nice thing is, I was ready for, some complaints or concerns or any kind of backlash, because, you're keeping bees in a city. They're in contact with a lot of people. But the awareness of it has gotten really great. And everybody I've spoken to has been really excited about it. I haven't gotten one complaint, barely any stings. I've got some in the KU Med campus here in town, and they're just right out. People can walk up to them, and that's thousands and thousands of people on that campus. Not a single complaint. The only times I've gotten emails about it or people are concerned, like they said, "Oh, these bees look sick," or are they doing the right thing? Or, "Hey, I noticed this hive was empty. Are they all right?" That kind of thing. So everybody loves them. They're really great. As far as space considerations, like you saw from the last one, you can keep them anywhere. Just face the entrance away from any walkways, public areas, what have you. They'll only defend in front of the hive. They don't even care about the back. They really like a southeast face, so they get that morning sun. But I have them all over the place, some in too much shade, some in a lot of sun, and you can adjust what you're doing to each location. So you can add more ventilation in the hive, you can close it off a little bit more, add water, don't worry about it. You can do a lot of different things. The only location that's been really bad is the rooftop downtown. There's no foraging around. Those bees really struggle to find food. And I think they wear themselves out flying down 5 floors and then flying around and then coming back up. I think they burn all the nectar that they get. And the wind is crazy. It just blows them all over the place. So that's been really tough. I just feed them more and then ventilation for the constant sun, but they get radiant heat from the roof. So it's kind of like every site is different. And then in terms of managing them in an urban situation, like I said, you just want to keep the diversity of pollinators. So the native homes that we build also have like butterfly boxes. I'm working on trying to do some bumblebee homes because those are lower to the ground. They like to go in and have a little cavern where they lay their eggs, as opposed to the classic ones you see with the holes drilled in wood. So there's a lot of great research you can do on each of those, and they're really fun to keep in the yard. They're no danger at all. The native bees don't defend those. And they're just really fun to watch. You can make them nice and they look cute in the garden. So that's awesome. As far as challenges, neighbors have all been really happy. Each location is kind of different. There's one spot that seems to be not doing so well, and it's the noisiest one. So it's right near the highway. There's a really busy street on a corner on both sides, and they get a little more shade. And so that spot I'm trying to tweak a little bit. But it's every spot is different. And in terms of the perception, like I said, everybody loves them. There's been no concerns about it whatsoever. So disease and pest, native homes. As far as honey production and monetizing it, that's the difficult thing. In the United States, there is a perception that honeybees are on the rise because the number of hives reported keeps going up. But honey production has kind of flatlined. And so what I think that means is that you have a much greater number of hives being kept by migratory pollinators. They're people who keep thousands of hives, put them on big flatbed trucks and take them to California, up and down the coast, anywhere that there's a big crop that needs pollinating. Because the almond fields, the citrus groves, they've decimated their landscape. So they don't have any pollinators. They need to bring them in. And the beekeepers there get way more money from renting out the migratory hives. So they're not as concerned with honey production. Honey's like a byproduct to them, and they just sell it in bulk. They don't worry about it. They also raise bees for sale. So basically breeding them and moving them around for pollination is way more profitable. And like anything in the United States agriculture, big business is taken over. It's really hard for small producers of anything to make a living. So, I've seen numbers anywhere from 300 to 500 hives if you want to make a living at it. And that's if you have access to a market. It's really difficult. So for me, I have 150 hives. We do the nonprofit, get some grants and donations, go to markets with the other honey, and then also do things like sell the native bee homes, do the workshops that people donate for, and a variety of other things that just diversifies the income. So I think what I tell some of the smaller farmers I work with is make t-shirts, make stickers, do farm visits, do events. It's really hard because they don't have a lot of time, but if you get creative about it, and if you find the right restaurants to partner with, you get the name out there, you have to build up the social media, you do all those different things, and it really adds up. Plus it builds community. So it's been really nice to get out there, and most of the smaller urban farms that I've worked with, most people haven't heard of them at all. Like even people in agriculture, they're like, oh, we didn't know that existed. Because these people, the farmers, don't have time to like go out and network, and they're really busy raising their stuff and going to markets and things. So any effort to build community is really huge. So overall, we do everything I've talked about, a lot of workshops, a lot of school visits. And I get a lot of questions over email and in the social media DMs that I like to answer. So I've got a lot of people who just send random questions in or send a picture and they say, hey, what does this look like? I capture swarms a lot, which this time of year is really fun. You just go around and get them off of trees or cut them out of walls. Some people might have seen recently, there was a baseball game, I think in Arizona, and there was a swarm of bees like somewhere in the stadium. And so they had to pause the game. Somebody came in and got the bees. And I've been waiting on that call. I really want to go to Arrowhead or the Royal Stadium and like grab some bees. That would be really fun. But that basically covers everything that I think I wanted to talk about. Did I go on long enough? Was it too long?
Oh, you nailed it. You nailed it. I'm going to ask you the question first, though, if that's all right, David. Because I got a good one here. From Logan Lane. It's David, what is the process for approaching a school to put a beehive at? So if you're looking to put a beehive at a school that you aren't at, how do you approach that? And then secondly, what is the process of proceeding with a hive being implemented with the risk of kids being allergic? How do you deal with like bee sting allergies and that risk?
So in terms of the process of approaching people, when I was starting it, I just sent out messages to every small farm I could think of within the city, a bunch of schools, every restaurant, found some really good partners. Most people just didn't have the capacity or space for it. And we hadn't done anything yet. So there wasn't anything, you couldn't look us up. There was no kind of provable case for it. And then after that, I get a lot of requests. And so right now I'm just trying to find the right partners for the mission. So one spot that is starting this year, actually two that are really awesome. There's one Holiday Montessori school. I'm going to put 10 hives there. They have a large campus for an elementary school. So I was able to put them across a fence in plain sight, but with some natural barriers to make sure that nobody stumbled across them. And the school is handling all of the kind of interaction with parents and teachers. But again, everybody's been really into it. And I'm always available for any questions or anything like that. And then there's a really great food pantry here in town called Mimi's Pantry. And they do an amazing job serving people who are food insecure. It's unbelievable, the produce. They look like a really awesome grocery store. And so I put 30 hives there, which is the largest site. I'm interested to see how they do because it is a large number, but they're just going to produce honey to give away to their clients. So that's really good. So basically, everybody has different questions. Every site is different. So people ask, and then we kind of go through the process. The interesting thing is I have not had a single contract. Everything's been just handshake. So even KU Med, I was approached by the landscaping crew, and they've been planting a bunch of natives and little food gardens on campus. And so they wanted to bring bees in, brought them in, no problem. Didn't even have to present to anybody. There was one case where somebody wanted some, but they were on a property controlled by HUD or, like operated by HUD or whatever of the city government. And that went through a lot of steps. And ultimately the lawyers were too concerned about it. And so they just scrapped the whole thing. So that does happen too.
Thank you. I'm actually going to start switching back and forth, if that's all right. So this next question is for Dr. Stan. The question is, Are there any risks to the nutritional aspect of honey compared to urban and rural beekeeping, especially given the higher level of pollution that you'd find in cities?
Great question. Great question. Yeah, actually, there was this concern that the honey harvested in the city might be more polluted than the honey harvested from the rural areas. But it is not always the case. These are the results of the research done so far. So indeed, there are cities which are highly polluted, and then of course the honey is contaminated with different pollutants. However, if the honey is harvesting from rural area where is intensive crop, for example, I don't know, sunflower or other type of or rapeseed, canola, which are highly pesticized, then that honey might be even more contaminated with contaminants than the honey from the city. So it really depends on the area. As David very nicely presented, there are areas in the city which are highly polluted, and there are suburbs where it's very nice, very clean, and this might be a better choice for the honey. There is one advantage to the honey obtained from the city in terms of nutritional point of view. So not speaking about contaminants, but from the nutritional point of view, it might have higher amounts actually of minerals, enzymes, and antioxidants because it is polyfloral. So it is not single floral, not single origin honey, but because the honeybee goes and harvests the nectar from every flower which he encounters in the area, that honey is richer in antioxidants and polyphenols. So this is actually a great advantage. And as I noticed in US, the multifloral honey is much more aromatic than European one. So here in Europe, the multifloral honey is very sour. It has a distinct sour tart taste, and it's not so pleasant for everyone. But your honey, your multifloral honey is amazing.
It's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Our next question is for David. It's from Comfort. It says, hello, David. You mentioned the locations where your bees are housed and the conditions they're subjected to in various areas all over Kansas City. Do you personally observe differences in the quality of honey or other apiary products that you produce as a result of these different conditions? The honey and products themselves.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a really tough thing to track in a city because, I mean, they go a great distance and there's so many different plants everywhere. You notice it's a really nice diversity in terms of light to dark. So one of the things I like to do is just harvest on as small a scale as possible. And that way you just preserve the really unique qualities of whatever site you're dealing with. And it differs, season to season. In the city, stuff is blooming all year round, so that's really nice. But I've seen the same hive have really light honey and really dark honey just at different times of the year. A lot of different flavors, but as far as I've noticed, I can't say that that comes from any specific thing in those areas.
Thank you. We'll swing it back to Dr. Stan. This one's from Sachin. It says, Dr. Stan, did any beekeepers you spoke to when you worked in Kansas mention any of the restrictions or policies that hindered their beekeeping operations?
I have met a beekeeper in the farmers market where I have been with Kim in search and hunting for honey samples. And to my surprise, that beekeeper told me that when I asked about other bee products like propolis, bee pollen, and bee bread, and so on, and the lady told me that propolis actually is something which is not really encouraged by the Food and Drug Administration to produce for lack of scientific evidence. And I was quite amazed because if you look on Google Scholar, you will find a huge amount of scientific articles about the benefits of propolis, especially related to health issues. So this was something which I learned about there. I never heard of something else, but I have to admit that all my conversations were focused on honey and honey type, the honey type they obtained and where they obtained from. I didn't ask so much about regulations.
No, thank
So
you so much for that. That was a great answer anyway. I learned something.
yeah, maybe David can say something more about American regulations because I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, absolutely, David. If you have any input on restrictions or regulations that might slow down.
Yeah, I haven't dealt with much of that at all. What's really nice is there are a lot of regulations in markets where you sell in terms of, fermented foods, produce, especially meat and dairy. But honey is just, it's antimicrobial, it's very safe. So they just let it go. I love propolis, and everybody that I've talked to that's heard of it, which isn't very many people, they love it. I've been trying to figure out a way to properly package it without having to explain so much what it is. You can make tinctures and you can have it powdered or a variety of ways. But yeah, I haven't encountered that. It's interesting to hear that the FDA doesn't like it, but that doesn't surprise me because I mean it's phenomenal. Everything out of the hive is a superfood.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Well, thank you. And we'll stay here for now. David, I got a question for you. Simple one. Do you mentor people who are interested in starting bees at their own urban farm?
Yeah, I've done that a lot. What I tend to do is encourage people to come to the workshops. A lot of people want to go along to help manage the hives, but I have so many to do in different spots, and there's a lot of drive time, so there's just not enough time to really work that in. But I do workshops, and a lot of workshops I've found that other people do only have a little bit of hive exposure, if any. And so, I mean, the hands-on is the most important. So I try to get people out, show them what a year might look like, spend a really good amount of time with the bees. And then what's happened is people who attend the workshops tend to ask a lot of questions and stay in contact. Another nice income source is some consulting. So a few people have wanted to start, anywhere from 5 to 15 hives of their own. And so I'll come out and kind of just give them some advice and talk them through, maybe make another visit. And there's no price. I don't have a per hour thing, but they always end up donating. And so that's pretty nice.
Wonderful. All right, and then one more question. I'm gonna actually direct this to both of y'all, so please feel free to jump in over and under each other. It's a good question. Uh, how do you determine an unadulterated honey on the market? How can you just look at honey and see, okay, I would like this, or this probably isn't the highest quality? Or are there any tips?
Yeah, I have some. I may start and maybe David can continue with his practical experience. So, first of all, I never buy honey from supermarket. And this is what I advise consumers always, never buy honey from supermarket. First of all, because it's pasteurized. And if it's pasteurized, it means that all the good stuff, which comes from pollen, enzymes, and pollen, which are proteins, they precipitate, and therefore the health benefit of the honey is drastically reduced. Secondly, it will, due to pasteurization, it will have a kind of burnt caramel-like taste, aroma, flavor, and it will lose its personality. So all the supermarket honey will be more or much in the same range, but will lack whatever makes them shine and truly show their value. So first of all, I admit I advise consumers to buy honey from a beekeeper. Look for a beekeeper close to your house, talk to him, discover how he makes honey, taste it. And first of all, try to taste it directly from the bee camp. That's the most pure and true honey which you can get. And buy a sample of honey. Don't invest that much in the beginning, especially if you don't know. Buy a small amount, then look for another beekeeper and buy from the other beekeeper, because all natural products have a kind of variability. So if you buy clover honey, for example, from David, it will have a specific flavor profile, while if you buy another clover honey from, I don't know, a beekeeper from 100 miles away, it might have a different flavor. Still might be true, authentic honey, clover honey. This is due to natural variability, because bees will fly and collect the nectar from a restricted area. They cannot fly that much. So they will gather everything which is open into their side. So that's why honey will have the particular, let's say, aroma and flavor fingerprint of the place where the bee live.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I actually have a good idea to segue this to David. Where do you find the best honey in Kansas City?
Right out of my hives. So, I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, I encourage everybody to keep them, because nobody can comprehend how great it is right out of the hive. I would echo everything Dr. Stan said. You go to farmers markets and see if you can trust the people. One thing that I've found that's kind of unfortunate is a lot of people at farmers markets end up repackaging, which means they'll get produce or even honey from a different source in bulk, take it, present it as their own. And I can understand why people do that, because it's very hard to make a living. But at the same time, it's kind of tough on the consumer. So normally, even if the honey person is repackaging, it's likely regional, it's likely raw, so it's still pretty good. But I always ask them how many hives they have and check that against the quantity that they're selling. Because I've seen some people in markets who have less than 100 hives and they're selling 5-pound jars, and they're selling a lot of them. That is not their honey. There's no way that they're getting that much out of that number of hives. And you don't go into the person and give them the fifth degree and say, is this actually yours? Just say, hey, how many hives do you have? Where do you keep them? How do you extract the honey? And you'll get a sense of whether or not it's good. And yeah, it's really hard to trust. I like to travel around and pick up honey wherever I go. My wife went to Nigeria recently, and so she brought some back and we tasted it. And it was not even honey at all. They put molasses and brown rice syrup and whatever in a big bottle, and it was disgusting. So you just never know what you're gonna get.
Awesome. Well, thanks to the both of you so
Yeah.
much. I don't think we have any more questions, but if y'all have any plugs or any last words you'd like, feel free. Otherwise, we will go ahead and finish up. Thanks again so much for coming today to talk to all of us, and thanks to those of you in the audience for joining us as well. Hope you have a lovely rest of your Wednesday, and hope you join us for the next Gaining Ground webinar series. But talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for your questions and for your interest.
Of course. Bye, y'all.